Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at that ongoing winter storm, major winter storm. We're going to look at the very tail end of it that is occurring at this point, and then we're going to be really diving into what the upcoming pattern has in store for us as far as the temperatures are concerned, the storminess is concerned, what's going to be going on with all of these pattern flips that we've been talking about. Is the energy going to go mostly towards the west, or is it going to head to the east again? We're going to talk about all that within this video. Anyways, before I get into this video, be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. For today's comment of the day, I asked you guys this one actually a couple days ago, but I'm going to ask it again. When do you think our next major winter storm is going to be? Because right now we don't really see one in the near future, so it is kind of a toss-up. I am curious to hear what some of you will have to say, though, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. This is an interesting morning. It's currently 5:22 Eastern time, and we have a lot of storminess heading into these Gulf states. You know, you can see this energy really just pouring into these states. Still, we see a lot of snowfall all the way back to Texas and Oklahoma, all the way up to Maine, stretching over many different states. Obviously, the majority of this snowfall is over the Northeast at this point, actually, but there still is some lingering remnants back here through the Ohio Valley and the plains. We're going to have to just zoom into all these regions and really dive into what's going on. First off, in the Dakotas, in Minnesota, and a bit of the plains regions, I guess overall, we do have some snow showers going on here at this point. So that's going to be worth noting that there could be some snowfall going on when you wake up for areas like South Dakota, northern Nebraska, northern Iowa, and then southern Minnesota as well. So we're going to need to watch for that, obviously. Now, as we take a look at some of this energy over the Gulf, this is super interesting, guys. We have a lot of this. This is what you see oftentimes in the spring months when we're looking at severe weather. We did have a bit of severe weather yesterday, and this line right here up at the front, you'll see this develop. Well, actually, let's zoom in a little bit. The one thing I do want to say is back here, there's probably not severe weather happening, but definitely flooding would be a concern in my opinion, because we talked about that training yesterday. I tried to explain it to you guys. It might have been a little bit confusing, but we see that these yellow areas that are elongated are heading kind of just like this along themselves. And that's the problem. So areas like Monroeville, Montgomery there in Alabama, even up through Atlanta as well, we see up here at the top. These areas of rainfall are just hitting the same exact regions. They're not moving on very quickly. So we're seeing tons and tons of flooding probably in these areas and inches of rainfall. And then we see this front that's advancing very slowly. This is also training. We can see that it's kind of moving. Oh, I would say, you know what, it's kind of moving like this. So it is advancing a little bit, but it also is, you know, bringing many different areas, you know, a lot of different rainfall. It's hard to explain, but I want to zoom in and try to explain this. So we can tell that Bonifay, let's just take that for an example. This shower is really lingering, and it's heading kind of northward along that front, a lot of the precipitation. So a lot of the red that was down here headed straight into Bonifay, and then eventually it did slowly move on. You'll see that happen there. That is training happening. And it was actually moving a little bit faster once it got there, which is also worth noting. But I would say here, along this front that's developed, do not be surprised if there's some windy impacts. And I guess it also stretches up into the Carolinas. So we need to zoom out a little bit here. This stretches across many different states, and it's actually advancing further and further northward. It is actually 64 here in Virginia today, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's even warmer down there in South Carolina and North Carolina. So I'm not surprised there's been some stormy impacts there for sure. It is quite warm, but this advancing front definitely features some wind, maybe even some lightning and thunder. I can actually turn on the lightning real quick if this will work. There we go. Oh yeah, there is a lot of lightning in there. We can see that taking place there. This is going to be fun, guys, in the severe weather season and in the thunderstorm season when we wake up and I'm able to turn on the lightning here for you guys. I should always have this on. I don't know what I'm thinking. But yeah, there's tons of lightning, like I suspected, happening along that frontal boundary. So definitely temperatures are warm. And speaking of temperatures, we can even turn on temperatures, actually, if I can find the METAR observations here. Let's see if it'll turn on. Yeah, so definitely it's, you know, upper 60s, lower 70s in here where these thunderstorms are heading. Clearly, that cold front is taking those temperatures down a lot because we see behind it a lot of 40s and 50s developing. So expect that once this front gets past you, and if it happens when by the time you're waking up or so, things are going to get a lot colder. So even for a lot of these areas, even though it's 60s and 70s right now, by the time this front passes through, expect much, much colder conditions to follow. So let's zoom in here. I know I've been focusing so much on the actual stuff that's happening, but I feel like that is very important for people. We've had a lot of snowfall taking place in here this morning. It is fizzling out from west to east, as you can see. These areas are especially fizzling out, but we do still have some of this lingering. But really, most of it has actually lingered or pretty much fallen apart by now. We do also have some snow showers taking place for some of the southern Ohio Valley, I guess I would call it. That hasn't really fallen apart yet, but it is still spotty. You know, not everywhere is seeing precipitation right now in these areas, and it's probably lighter snowfall. Now, we do see some of this freezing rain taking place in here. The freezing rain has been very impactful throughout this entire storm. So we saw a lot of that for Ohio, Kentucky. Now we're seeing it mostly in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And as we move up, there's a lot of things to talk about here in the Northeast, so let's take a wider view a little bit here. We do have some of that flooding rainfall here for southern New England and portions of the mid-Atlantic here for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City, for instance. We're seeing mostly rainfall, and that is pretty heavy, actually. Now, just to the north of there, we do have actually a pretty thin but also pretty thick area of freezing rain. I would say it's pretty moderate region of freezing rain. And that is taking effect in central regions of Pennsylvania, kind of the Catskills regions of New York, the Green Mountain regions of, I almost wanted to say Pennsylvania, Vermont there, and then southern New Hampshire, which isn't really particularly mountainous, I wouldn't say. And then we see coastal Maine there as well, getting some of that icy mix. Just to the north of there, though, this is where the heaviest snowfall is occurring. We see these blues mixing in. If you understand radar, that is 30 dBz plus snowfall that's taking place there in those blues. So that is extremely heavy snowfall, and even if you're not in the blues, every color that you see that's almost like pure white, that is your heavier snowfall taking place. The grays, the darker grays are going to be your very light snowfall, and then the medium, something in between the white and the dark grays, so your kind of medium grays, your lighter grays, that's going to be your more steady snowfall, not light, not heavy, more moderate, just to kind of be clear there about what you're probably seeing on the ground here with this snowfall. And by the time we wake up tomorrow, this will probably all be said and done, which is crazy. So we're going to say goodbye to this huge storm, and we're going to move on, and we're going to figure out what's going to be happening next. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about that modeled guidance and see what we can expect here in the near future. Now, firstly, we're going to take a look at our simulated radar. So here is our storm. This is by time I'll be making a video tomorrow. There might be some lingering. Let me get to where I will be. Probably this frame right here. So there might be some lingering remnants here along the eastern seaboard, but it's going to be, for the most part, said and done. And look, it's going to be so much colder. We see a bit of a dip here, but much more of a dip here with the jet stream. It's going to be so cold behind this cold front. That's what we're expecting at this point. Most of the warmth here in the southwest is kind of remnant of what we saw in January, which is interesting. And we kind of stick in this pattern. Okay, I am worried about my February forecast because things have actually gone, you know, how they have in January a little bit. We have had some warm-ups, which isn't what we saw a lot of in January, so it has been a bit different, but definitely things have lingered on kind of in a January-type fashion, what we saw just a month ago. Now, I will say in the southeast, this is why I wasn't talking too much about that snowstorm that everybody was talking about, because this has basically turned into nothing. This was what was supposed to be a snowstorm, and we can see for the Smoky Mountains, a tiny bit of snowfall. That's it. And that's Monday at about 2 p.m. There's not enough cold air there. It does not become a snowstorm on this model now. Is that to say that it's impossible for these two areas? There's one there. We see another here. And basically this one moves out. This one moves in and takes a similar track. We can see this one looks like a closer call because we do see some snowfall mixing in on the northern end. It's Tuesday into Wednesday. But again, these wouldn't be major anyway. And really, they don't take place here on any of the models. There's just not enough cold air available. A lot of the times, like for instance, the jet stream here looks like it's doing mostly this to me. There's a bit of a trough trying to take place there, but it's a weaker one. So we're not seeing like frigid air move in. The one feature we did see when we saw these southeast snowstorms taking place in January, it was all made possible by a massive ridge in the west and a massive trough in the west. When you have a pattern like this, where the jet stream's dipping down into the deep south, like practically the jet stream is moving over Florida, and the cold is that far south, yeah, you can get snowfall for North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia all day, every day. But when the jet stream looks like this, that's when things become a little bit more skeptical. And is that to say it's impossible for this to become a, snowstorm for these regions again? No, things can trend. We have 120 hours. Things can trend colder. Things can trend towards more snow, and generally this can become a snowstorm. But it's just not looking like those ones did in January, and that's why I'm a bit skeptical. Now, in January type fashion, we do see a trough move in though after that storm, and we see one here and one here. We're seeing these clippers again, which is what we saw a lot of in the month of January. Super, super interesting. So we see this one actually becomes something of a storm for sure. We see moderate snowfall for these regions here. This is by Friday, February 11th. Let's continue this on. That's a big trough, by the way, right here. So this is a massive cool down there around the 11th that this model is calling for. This is our GFS model, which has been better in recent years. So this model is no longer a laughing stock, I'll say that. Now, the next storm we even get that looks anything major is February 13th, which I guess isn't crazy far out. It's almost 10 days, so we are going to be at a quieter pattern here coming up for the next week or so, regardless. But the next major storm pops up right after that is said and done, and we have a piece of energy here. We have our main piece of energy here. If those could become more combined, I mean, we do have the cold air available. Clearly, the jet stream is doing this, so this is going to ride right along that. We can see that becomes a major snowstorm, which is interesting for sure. And then we get a major storm right after that. So let's take it one at a time. Let me zoom into the east here. This is beyond 240 hours out, I will say that. So this is take it with a grain of salt. But this is a 6 to 10 inch, maybe 10 inch plus snowstorm for a lot of the eastern seaboard. Obviously, with this type of range, this could end up being nothing. So this could fizzle away and not even happen at all. The low pressure system could track way further west, and this could become a snowstorm for these regions instead. It could track way further east and southeast and become a snowstorm more for these regions, the more coastal regions, and be much more minor. Anything can happen at this range. I think it is worth noting a little bit that there is a storm signal here, but really it is not something that is, I'm not feeling super confident in. The GFS model does get us in an active pattern though, because we get another major storm there. Just a couple days later on the 20th, we get a storm here. That's the 994 here. So the GFS, the main thing to note, it's not like, okay, the GFS at hours 384 has, western Colorado seeing moderate snowfall. No, you can't be like that with the models at this range. But what we can say is, all right, there's no storms on the GFS for the next 7 to 10 days. That's something that, even though it's very long range, we can take and say that might be pretty legitimate. Now, it might be wrong, but that is much more likely to be right than Colorado seeing some snowfall on February 20th at 8 p.m. That's not going to be what's going to be accurate at that range. And then we see after that 7 to 10 day period, we do have a stormy period that follows it. We have multiple storm signals afterwards, and that's also worth noting, and that's something that might be accurate as well. We need to see what kind of ensemble support that has. We need to make sure it stays on the model, over the course of multiple days. That's another thing. And then once it's in range for the European model, we need to see if the European model also is on board. Once those things happen, I'll feel much more confident in an active pattern coming up. But at this point, our confidence tab is at a 4 out of 6. So my confidence isn't necessarily super low, but it's not super high either. I definitely feel like those two topics, like I said, being in a quieter pattern, being in a much more active pattern afterwards, isn't that challenging to try to predict with the models compared to more specific details. So I don't feel like that's something that I would be at like a 2 or a 1 over. That's something that I'd be at about a 50-50 confidence with, talking over the next 1 to 2 weeks range. That's just how I believe it should work, though. For today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, do you think this winter is going to linger into the spring months? Or do you think we're going to see an early spring, perhaps March being a little bit warmer? And James Marr, this was so interesting. I know I pick James Marr every single day, but this one I couldn't resist. I believe it will linger into early spring months, and the worst is still yet to come. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. I don't necessarily believe that to be true or untrue, but I do find it definitely compelling. So I decided to pick that one for today's comment of the day for that reason. For today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons, Bill Crates, James Wade, Dovin Nagel, Larry LePan, Mandy Birchfield, Patrick Strickland, Dave Scott, Donna Carnes as well. I would also like to thank our diamond patrons, Bill Roberts, Marcus Connolly, Noah Harley, Michael Cotalesa, Capite, Charles Smith, Bill Dallas, Gary's, and John Colisi also. I would also like to thank our channel members, Capite, Stephen Fan, and Jeremy Cox as well. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. I'll see you guys in the next video.